It started on a cold Thursday morning. The kind of cold that wraps around your bones and clings like fear. Maeve Turner sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the eviction notice she had found pinned to her apartment door. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes were vacant. She'd read it 3 times already, and the words didn't change. You have 72 hours to vacate. That was it. Just like that, 15 years of surviving in that tiny one-bedroom unit was about to be erased. She wasn't always this way. Once, Maeve had been a nurse with bright eyes and a gentle smile. That was before the layoffs. Before her husband left. Before her son got sick and she had to pawn everything she owned just to afford one more visit to the emergency room. The world hadn't ended all at once. It had crumbled slowly, like rotting wood under pressure, until all that remained was desperation. Her job now was wiping tables at a diner downtown, a place where the lights always flickered and the customers tipped in change, if they tipped at all. It wasn't enough to survive. She'd stopped answering calls from bill collectors. She'd stopped hoping for miracles. That morning she hadn't eaten. The fridge held a half bottle of ketchup, some old bread, and a jug of milk that had expired a week ago. She sat for a long time in silence, thinking of nothing and everything at once. Then came the noise. Tires screeching, hurried voices outside. She moved to the window and peered through the broken blinds. A black SUV had pulled up across the street. 3 masked men jumped out, dragging a 4th man between them. They were shouting. One carried a crowbar. Another a pistol. Maeve's first instinct was to back away. But something stopped her. Instead, she kept watching. They forced the 4th man to his knees and shoved him up against the alley wall. The pistol was raised. Her heart froze. One gunshot cracked through the air, and the man slumped. The masked men ran to the SUV, laughing like it was a game, and sped off. Maeve stood still, breathing heavy. Her mind tried to rationalize, deny, explain, but it couldn't. She had just witnessed a murder. Part of her told her to call the police. But another voice, darker, colder, told her they wouldn't come. Not for someone like her. Not in a neighborhood like this. They never did. She put on her coat and hurried downstairs. The alley was empty except for the body. A man mid-30s, expensive clothes, wallet still in his pocket. Blood pooled beneath his head. His eyes were open. She didn't know what she expected to find, but it wasn't this. She looked around nervously, but no one else had seen it. No one came out. No cameras. Just her. And then beside the body she noticed something. A duffel bag. She picked it up, hesitated, then opened it. Inside were bundles of cash, tens of thousands, maybe more. Her knees buckled. She nearly dropped it. Her hands shook as she zipped it shut again. This couldn't be real. But it was. And it was hers now. She dragged the bag home and locked every door and window. She sat on her kitchen floor and stared at it. Her breath quickened. This money, it could save her. Save her son. Buy a new life. A future. It wasn't just money. It was salvation. But it also meant something else. The men would come back. Whoever they were, they'd come looking for the bag. Maeve knew this wasn't just some street crime. That SUV, the execution, the professionalism, they were organized, ruthless. And now she had what they wanted. For 2 days Maeve didn't sleep. She hid the bag in the floorboards and carried a knife in her hand even when she showered. Her phone rang constantly, unknown numbers. She didn't answer. Then on the 3rd night they came. Started with a knock. Gentle. Almost polite. Then louder. A voice through the door. We just want to talk. Maeve didn't respond. Then the door cracked open. A boot. A silhouette. Maeve moved quickly. She had bought a cheap revolver at a pawn shop with a few hundred from the bag. It was loaded. Her hand didn't shake. When the man stepped through the door she fired. Once in the chest. Once in the neck. He dropped instantly. The others rushed in behind him. She ducked behind the couch. Bullets tore through the drywall. She didn't remember exactly what happened next. Only that when it was over, 3 men lay dead in her living room. Her ears rang. Her arm bled from a graze. She stood, shaking, and realized she was still alive. The police would never understand. She was a broke, unemployed waitress who had just killed 3 men. They wouldn't listen to stories about duffel bags and mysterious SUVs. They'd see a criminal. So she cleaned. For hours she scrubbed and dragged and buried. She wrapped the bodies in shower curtains and drove them to the woods. She didn't stop shaking until sunrise. It would have ended there, could have. But something shifted inside Maeve that night. A voice she had silenced for years now whispered louder than ever. What if you didn't just survive? What if you became the storm? She still had the bag of cash. But she also had their weapons now, their car, their phones. She turned one on. Messages loaded. Names. Locations. Deals. Schedules. The robbers weren't random thugs. They were part of something bigger. And Maeve now held their place. She made her choice. She studied their operations, followed their contacts, used their numbers. She dressed in their clothes, copied their speech, played the part. No one suspected. When she showed up at a planned handoff with a ski mask and a cold stare, they assumed she was filling in for one of the guys. Maeve was smart. Smarter than they were. She changed their methods. Cleaner, quicker. No witnesses. More money. Less risk. Soon she wasn't just taking their place. She was running their business better than they ever did. Months passed. Maeve moved out of the slum and into a modest home under a false name. She paid off her son's medical debt. Got him the treatment he needed. He survived. Began to smile again. She started carrying herself differently. Less like prey, more like a predator. But she didn't kill unless she had to. Most of her operations were robberies, scams, high-stakes heists. When things went wrong, she acted without mercy. Yet when she could, she avoided blood. She told herself she wasn't like them, that she had rules. But in her quiet moments, that voice in her head reminded her. You killed. You buried. You chose this. One night, after a successful job, she sat alone in her new house with a drink in hand. She watched her son sleep from the hallway. His small chest rising and falling peacefully. That was why she did it. That was the truth. But the storm was never far behind. And Maeve knew the deeper she went, the harder it would be to leave. One evening she got a call from someone higher up, someone her former team answered to. They wanted a meeting. It wasn't a request. She went armed and ready. A warehouse on the edge of the city. Inside, 2 men and a woman waited. The woman, Lena, had sharp eyes and an accent Maeve couldn't place. She didn't waste time. You're not Anton, she said, referring to one of the men Maeve had killed. I'm better, Maeve replied. A long silence followed. Then laughter. Real amused laughter. Lena leaned in. You're bold. I like that. You've done good work. Clean. Profitable. We've been watching. Maeve stayed silent. We don't care what happened to Anton. He was sloppy. But you have potential. If you want in, really in, we'll back you. It was a deal with the devil. But it was also an offer of protection, power, and permanence. Maeve nodded once. And so she rose. Over the next year, she became a ghost story whispered among the underworld. A woman with ice in her veins and fire in her eyes. No past. No name. Just the legend. She built an empire in shadows, always one step ahead. Always alone. But the guilt never fully left her. In dreams, the faces of the dead haunted her. Sometimes she'd wake up sweating, hearing the echo of that first gunshot, seeing the man in the alley slump down again. She tried to justify it, told herself she'd been cornered, that she saved herself and her son. But deep down, she knew she had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Still, the world didn't stop. One day bled into the next, jobs piled up, and Maeve kept moving. She taught her son to be kind, to work hard, to never lie. She kept her two lives separate. He would never know what she did, what she had become, until one day years later he found an old phone buried in a drawer. On it, messages, photos, plans. He was 16 then, old enough to understand. He confronted her, eyes wide with disbelief and horror. "Mom, what is this?" Maeve looked at him for a long time. Then slowly she sat him down and told him everything. He cried. She did too. But in the end he didn't run. He didn't leave. He hugged her. He said, "You saved me. You did what you had to do." For the first time in years, Maeve let go of the breath she'd been holding. She promised him she'd get out. And she did. Quietly. Carefully. She passed the empire to someone else, someone ruthless but loyal. She moved them far away, to a quiet town where no one knew her name. And Maeve Turner, once a desperate woman on the edge, became something else entirely. Not a monster. Not a saint. But a mother who had walked through fire and lived to see the other side.